History in the making as Hillary Clinton edges closer to becoming the first female to be a presumed presidential nominee. In Zimbabwe, hip-hop, dance and beatboxing are the weapons of choice in the war against HIV. And a conversation with Ghanaian British award-winning actress Amake Abebrese. Africa 54 starts right now. Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Now, with primary voting underway in 6 U.S. states Tuesday, including delegate-rich California, Democratic presidential frontrunner Hillary Clinton can officially become the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee by Tuesday's end. The former U.S. Secretary of State unofficially reached the delegates needed to become the nominee on Monday night. She will not be formally named the Democratic Party candidate until its convention next month in Philadelphia, but she has clinched the majority 2,383 delegates needed to defeat Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Clinton expressed caution Monday night during a campaign rally near Los Angeles.
I got to tell you, according to the news, we are on the brink of a historic, unprecedented moment. But we still have work to do, don't we?
Ignoring the delegates' counts issued by various news outlets, Sanders predicted a huge victory in Tuesday's primary elections in California and 5 other states and vowed to carry his fight for the nomination until the very end.
And if there is a large voter turnout, if working people and young people come out in big numbers to demand a government that represents all of us and not just the 1%, we're going to win big tomorrow. And if we can win here in California, win in South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, New Mexico, do well in New Jersey, we're going to go into that convention with enormous momentum.
Sanders spokesman Michael Briggs issued a statement saying Clinton can only claim a majority if one counts the hundreds of so-called superdelegates who are now backing Clinton but are free to change their minds before the convention. Briggs says Sanders' campaign will begin working to convince the superdelegates the veteran lawmaker is the strongest candidate to run against billionaire Donald Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee in the November general election. Tuesday is the last major day in the primary process, with nearly all of the 851 remaining delegates at stake. Well, boxing legend Muhammad Ali was not only known for his skill inside the ring, but he also was known for his activism outside the ring. Born a Cassius Clay, Ali died last week at age 74. The former heavyweight champion is being remembered internationally, with many dignitaries expected at his funeral on Friday. VOA's Caroline Presutti explains why the sports icon's popularity extended far beyond the boundaries of the United States.
Before a fight, Muhammad Ali could be a braggart.
And the world will bow and admit that I am the greatest of all times.
During the fight, he could be a showman. Colorful and controversial, he took his boxing global. In Africa for his rumble in the jungle with fellow American George Foreman. In the Philippines for the Thrilla in Manila against Joe Frazier.
When I was a child in Afghanistan, I heard about him, and everybody wanted to be Ali in his school.
Muhammad Ali had 56 wins and 5 losses. But not everyone knows of his diplomatic record outside the ring. In 1985, Ali flew to Lebanon, but failed to get hostages freed from a hijacking. 5 years later, during the Gulf War, he met with Iraq's Saddam Hussein and brought 15 American hostages home. Tributes keep pouring into Ali's hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, where Imam Zaid Shakir will lead a prayer and memorial service. He says Ali became an international name after he refused to fight in the Vietnam War and was stripped of his heavyweight title. Imam Shakir spoke via Skype.
He could have the cars and the homes and the yachts and the money and the limelight, and he gave all of that up to take a principled stand in defense of the weak and downtrodden.
Attending Friday's funeral, several heads of state, including Jordan's King Abdullah and Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. No surprise to the owner of this boutique.
He was very popular, and me and my age, we all grew up with him. We watch his games, and we know him very well.
No one knows that better than Ali's daughter, Layla.
This man transcends everything there is, and everybody just loves him, so there isn't anybody else like him. I don't think there ever will be.
Muhammad Ali leaves a legacy extending across the globe. And this quote of his speaks to all of us. Live every day as if it were your last, because someday you're going to be right. Ali's someday was last Friday. Carolyn Presutti, VOA News, Washington.
I'm the greatest, and I'm knocking out all bums. And if you get too small, I'll knock you out.
Well, a family spokesman says Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan and Jordan's King Abdullah are among the luminaries expected to attend Ali's funeral in Louisville, Kentucky on Friday.
Everything that we're doing here was blessed by Muhammad Ali and was requested. So, he wanted the memorial service to reflect his life and how he lived. And the fact that, he wanted everyone to be able to attend. He was the people's champ. And so he wanted that memorial service to reflect that.
Well, Ganell says many aspects of the funeral were planned by Ali himself. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton, a longtime friend of Ali's, is scheduled to deliver the eulogy. Also scheduled to speak is American comedian Billy Crystal and Ali's daughter, Mariam. The Dalai Lama was invited, but sent regrets that he would be unable to attend. Ganell says Ali wanted multiple religions to be represented at the public service, which he says will include ministers from many faiths. U.S. officials are concerned over Democratic Republic of Congo's President Joseph Kabila's apparent attempts to cling to power. They are now pushing for sanctions against his inner circle. But European powers are opposed to such action, cautioning that moving too quickly might further destabilize the whole region. The U.S. Senate Africa Subcommittee is expected to hold a hearing Wednesday on U.S. sanctions policy in sub-Saharan Africa. Senator Jeff Flake, the subcommittee's chairman, told Reuters he had discussed targeted sanctions with State Department officials. The U.S. Congress is pushing President Barack Obama's administration to act unilaterally if it must. Kabila's opponents accuse him of plotting to hold on to power by delaying the poll or even changing the constitution to remove the term limits. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vincent Makori. Coming up, looking at the correlation between population age, good health, and income. Stay with us.
Green Beat for a healthier planet.
Here's a do-it-yourself project that could help you make a few dollars and save the environment at the same time. Too good to be true? Dave Hawkins doesn't think so.
With this project, we want to try and boost plastic recycling by providing people the tools to get started. So this is all the basic information people need to start their own little recycle business.
Hawkins is the founder of Precious Plastic, and he's figured out a way for anyone to recycle plastic in their home, then create some interesting, possibly sellable items like toys, clipboards, pots, and bowls. Hawkins says he's on a mission to help the world recycle.
By visiting our website, you can simply spread it around. Make sure it reaches your friends, uncle, neighbor, but also that farmer living somewhere in the middle of Africa. Once the information is spread, the recycling begins.
A study by the National Resources Defense Council says more than 1 million jobs could be created just in the United States by recycling 75% of its waste. I'm Rebecca Ward for VOA's Green Beat.
Well, it's time for Africa Health Report, and joining us now is Africa 54 Health correspondent Lino Mudu. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Vincent. Observers say globally demographic dividend is pivotal for achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations Population Fund's UNFPA says the demographic dividend is the economic growth potential that can result from shifts in a population's age structure. It also says countries with the greatest demographic advantages for development are those entering a period in which the working age population will have a low proportion of young dependents and the benefits of good health, among other things. Youth are about half of the population of sub-Saharan Africa, and observers say ensuring the well-being of young people in Africa is critical. Access to family planning and tackling diseases like HIV/AIDS are some key steps to ensuring their well-being. Now, joining us live from the United Nations studio for more on the discussion is Mabeng Ngam, Regional Director for West and Central Africa with the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA. Mr. Ngam, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Mr. Ngam, please explain to us about the demographic dividend. How do we understand this? There are several key pillars in this concept. How can you help us understand this, especially when it comes to health and well-being of populations?
Well, first of all, it's a very complex reality, but let me try to explain it very, very simply. And I will take an example of a population of a nation that is predominantly composed with young people. This means there will be a lot of fiscal effort to take care of the need of the young people, be it health, education, safety, and so on and so forth. In contrast, if you look at a population that is predominantly with people that are working age, there will be a less tendency to spend more on taking care of those who cannot work. So in the second case, you have an ability of the country to make savings and to invest and to create employment and generate, additional productivity. While in the first case, there will be a tendency to spend much of the income in every house in consumption. So these are really the two basic cases. So in Africa, currently, you have a large number of young people. This means the fiscal effort in every household is predominantly going to consumption. If, for instance, we invest in harnessing the demographic dividend, that is the case we are working currently with the potential we have with the largest cohort of working age people in Africa, I think we'll be able to generate, I think, some significant boosts in terms of development of the continent. So the additional productivity is what we call the demographic dividend. So in contrast with the first case, where you have a large number, a significant effort going to consumption, in the second case, you have, because of the dependency ratio that is much lower, there will be a potential for growth.
So let's talk about the priorities when it comes to the well-being of the youth, given that they comprise more than 50% of the population in Africa. If we were to narrow down to health and well-being, what are the priorities right now?
I think the priority will be health, education, employment, and investment in the skills. Because as you know, today you have, for example, crisis in the Sahel, you have crisis in the Lac Chad Basin, and the youth crisis in Africa is all about a crisis of lack of opportunity, lack of hope. So unless African young people have opportunity for education, opportunity for skills, and opportunity for employment, they will be easily manipulated or instrumentalized. And I think it will be really an open door to all kind of violent terrorism. Because today, when young people fail to migrate, that is today the only opportunity they have. When they fail and return home, now they're exposed to all kind of manipulation, including manipulation by terrorist groups.
The demographic dividend also look at the relation between economic growth and the decline in fertility of a country's fertility. So that leads us to the issue of family planning. Can you quickly tell us about family planning and the youth?
No, I'm glad you raised the issue of fertility. because very often there is a confusion when we talk about demographic dividend. People think that it's about the size of the population or the growth of the population, but it's about the age structure of the population that is determined by two factors. One is mortality, the second one is fertility rate. So as we invest in health, and as we make sure that women have access to family planning and can make an informed choice, and are sure that their children will live longer, so they do not need to have, a large number of children, things become much easier. So the relationship between family planning and harnessing the demographic dividend is very, very, very close.
Okay, Mr. Ngom, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that was Mabeng Ngom. He is UNFPA Regional Director for West and Central Africa. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Linor Mudu. Vincent?
Thank you very much, and be sure to watch Linor Mudu's health report every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. And now staying with health. In Zimbabwe, popular youth culture like hip-hop and dance is inspiring young people to step up to the HIV pandemic and zero in on new infection rates. The Step Up to HIV project empowers young activists working in HIV prevention, sexual reproductive health and advocacy campaigns in schools and communities. And it's having an impact. Vincent Makori reports from Harare.
Jump on the wang wang.
My name is Plot Marco. I'm the founder and project director for Jubilee Dance Trust. We're the ones that are responsible for this program called Step Up to HIV, where we're talking to young people using a language and an art form that they understand first, which is popular youth culture. So using from dance, hip hop, dance or beatbox, anything that interests young people, using it to relay a positive message and them to step up and stay away from negative influence, to get tested, to get circumcised, and to always be safe all the time, to be conscious about their sexual reproductive health.
I was empowering other people because we did something like theater. We were dancing while acting. The act was about a girl was raped and she got HIV.
The response has been overwhelming. We managed to get, about 250, 300 young people coming through to engage, get entertained, and also express themselves freely in a language that they understand and love. If young people are getting an education from popular culture, why not use it to educate them? That has been our ideology behind the whole program. So today what informs young people is what they see on TV, what they hear on radio. So why not use that same approach, but now in a positive way, to engage them, to empower them, and also give them some life skills apart from just the information. We're saying when they get information, what do they do with that? Especially when they are faced with unemployment and a lot of social problems. We're saying we're going to give them the knowledge, but also some life skills so that at least they're empowered.
The youth of today care more about condomizing than abstinence. You can't preach abstinence to them, especially the youth from the communities. Well, the school kids, they are limited within the school that you have to teach them to abstain. But then when it comes to the youth now, if you talk abstinence to them, they tell you that we're already doing it. So tell us something new. So you have to preach condomization, and condomization is sticking to one partner.
We're stepping up to it because HIV stepped up to us first. So we're stepping back. That's what it is. So understand the aggression when we try to do this. We're empowering the youth, not only for them to listen to what to do, but to think of better ways of solving something that has been taking generations for us to fix. We still dream for a very free, HIV-free generation, but we always think the youth have the answer. But unless we empower them to think, unless we empower them to dream, unless we empower them to speak, we might never find the actual cure for this.
Step up to HIV! Step up! Step up to HIV! Step up to HIV!
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Ghanaian and British award-winning actress Amake Abebrese talks about telling the African story through movies. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In South Africa, the British government warns foreigners in major cities of possible attacks in shopping malls after the U.S. issued similar warnings in the capital. In Kenya, opposition leader Raila Odinga joins continued protest after 2 are shot dead at anti-government rallies in Kisumu. In Cameroon, young innovators and tech enthusiasts joined together in the nation's capital to launch the first locally created video game. Finally, in Bamako's Hamdallah, Muslims observe the beginning of Ramadan and pray for peace in their country. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Oprah Winfrey did it again. Now, the Queen of Talk placed second on Forbes' annual America's Richest Self-Made Women's list with a personal fortune of $3.1 billion behind building supplies tycoon Diane Hendricks. Beyonce made it to number 56 this year with $265 million. Madonna, the second person on the entertainers list, came in at number 25 with $560 million. 13 newcomers debuted in this year's expanded list of 60. It included Celine Dion at number 37 and Barbra Streisand at number 38. Pop star Taylor Swift is at number 60 with $250 million. Well, next up, thousands of visitors gather for a rehearsal of Shanghai's Disney's opening night extravaganza. Theme parks are sprouting up at a phenomenal rate in China as interest skyrockets. Wonder City includes a shopping mall, ocean park, and yes, a theme park in the relatively unknown city of Nanchang. The park is themed around Chinese culture, an element developers are keen to stress is different from Disney's reliance on well-known characters like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Annual theme park visitor numbers are focused to more than double from 133 million in 2014 to 282 million in 2019. That's according to Euromonitor International, a research company. Well, and finally, an inventor hopes to woo urban hipsters with an unusual bike. This thing is called the halbrad or half bike. It looks like a regular bike that is missing its front half. It's about 1 meter high and 76 centimeters long. The halbrad's handlebars are located underneath the saddle. So to steer, riders must sit up straight and hold their hands below their thighs, allowing them to turn the tiny front wheel attached to a rod that descends from the saddle. The bike's low weight and small size make it one of the lightest bikes on the market at just 9 kilos. Now, the price for the first 10 handmade prototypes of halbrad is 1,250 euros each, and they're only available via crowdfunding platform Startnext. And that is what is trending today. Well, Ama K. Abebrese is a Ghanaian-British award-winning actress, a television presenter, and a producer. She played a supporting role in the critically acclaimed Netflix movie Beast of No Nation, starring Idris Elba. Abebrese recently sat down with me to talk about her acting career and how it all began.
My journey when it comes to acting goes way back from a very young age. I remember watching a movie called The Color Purple. It's Steven Spielberg directed it, Oprah was in it. It was a huge film, I think early 90s. I was very young. And I remember at the end of the movie, I saw in the credits a name, Akosio Buzia. And I was in London, that's where I grew up. And I was thinking, wow, this person has a similar name to me. From there, I was hooked, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna, get into as much as possible. So I did all the school plays, went on to study drama at university. I have a degree in drama and media arts, and did my auditions from there. Then when I moved to Ghana about 6 years ago, I auditioned for a movie called Sinking Sands, which I got the lead, and the rest is history.
What do you make of actually making that transition from Britain to Africa, to Ghana specifically, and delving into movie acting in your home country?
It was interesting because I didn't know much about Ghanaian cinema or Ghanaian film because the vast majority of my life had been in London. But I used to watch the movies, the home movies. Anytime we'd go on holiday, we'll buy it, and I used to really love it. So when I didn't know what to expect because I'd never been on a film set in Ghana, and I've been on film sets in the UK. It was different. Lucky for me, the first film which I was cast in was, it had an international crew, so it was very professional, and it was amazing. Since then, I've obviously been on different sets, and it's different. I think we don't have as much resources. We can't compare ourselves to Hollywood or mainstream by any chance, but I think we have some of the most dedicated filmmakers because it's the passion that drives most of us that make film on the continent of Africa, especially since we don't have those huge budgets.
And one of the things that struck many people across the world is that the movie production in Nigeria and Ghana has really gone up. But some people say, well, perhaps there is a frenzy in producing movies, but there needs to be a little time given to producing quality movies.
I think, like anything, if you look at Hollywood, they have the B movies, they have independent movies, and usually some of them are not that good, they're not that great of a quality. I think the same thing if you look at the film industry in Ghana and Nigeria. There are those who are taking time, spending a year or two, and really doing quality productions. There's a few, but then the vast majority do what, the turnover. They'll do a movie very quick, turnover within a couple of weeks, a couple of months. And those are usually low budget, funny films. They have a huge audience. I mean, the audience actually tends to be a lot more bigger than the ones doing the quality. So I think, yes, you just like you have low quality movies, we also have them there. It's just unfortunate. I feel like the world tends to see more of our lower budget, very, very low budget films as opposed to the high-end ones.
What do you make of the stories that are being told from either Ghana or Nigeria, but let's focus on Ghana? Are we trying to tell the Ghanaian story in the movies, or are we increasingly finding ourselves trying to emulate Hollywood and do the Hollywood-style movies?
I think, yes, we're telling Ghanaian stories, but maybe we're not telling the great Ghanaian stories. I love to hear, watching an Nkrumah film, Yasantua, even how Ghana came to gain independence. I think we're telling stories, different stories, maybe not enough of our own historical stories, but I've noticed too, I think the reason we don't tell some of our bigger historical stories is because budgets involved would be huge if you wanted to do them correctly. There are those who emulate, but even if you emulate, some of the times you wouldn't even recognize it's the same story because if their budgets don't meet up. I know someone that did a version of Pretty Woman, and it looked totally different. Only those who knew Pretty Woman like myself, I'd be, oh, isn't that Pretty Woman? People do that, and I don't think, I just wish we had the budgets to tell our own stories the way it should be told in a grand way.
And that's our show. Thanks. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
Here is a story that has to do with defects or problems with cars.
Listen for the word that means to take back something. Recall.
They had meetings over this defect. They shared complaints over this defect. Yet there was no investigation by the government and no recall by General Motors until 10 years later.
Recall. It is a word that means to ask people officially to return something.
In our story, there were major problems with some General Motors cars. The man says the U.S. government and the car company took too long to issue a recall, so the cars could be fixed.
Now, when you hear the word recall, your American English will be good enough to know what this newsword means.
I'm Vincent Makori from Africa 54. This is VOA. Follow us on Africa 54. Go to facebook.com/VOA Africa 54.